They tell you that it's about democracy. They tell you it's about preventing a nuclear breakout. They tell you it's about regional stability. But if you're watching this channel, you know the golden rule of a fiat world: follow the money. In March of 2026, as missiles fly all over the Middle East, the talking heads on TV are reading from a script written in 1974. They can't tell you the truth because the truth is too terrifying for the average citizen to even hear. Your prosperity in the West isn't built on innovation or hard work. It's built on a global extortion racket called the petrodollar. The war in Iran isn't a conflict of values. It's a maintenance cost. It is a desperate, violent attempt by a dying monetary system to keep the world's most important commodity, which is oil, tethered to a currency that is being printed into absolute oblivion. Today, we're going to look past the propaganda. We're going to walk and talk about the 1971 Nixon Shock and how it necessitated a blood tax, and how the BRICS nations are pulling the rug out from under Washington, and why under a Bitcoin standard, this entire theater of war would be mathematically impossible or very difficult to undertake. This is the Debasement Index. My name is Angel Rios, and let's get into the real reason for the Iran war today. Let's go. To understand why we are at war in 2026, you have to understand what happened on August 15th, 1971, the day the entire world broke. President Richard Nixon temporarily suspended, and I put temporarily in quotation marks, the convertibility of the US dollar into gold. For decades, the dollar was as good as gold. After Nixon, it was as good as nothing. It was a purely political ledger, but there was a problem. Why would the rest of the world keep using currency that the US can print at will? Well, the answer came in 1974 when Henry Kissinger made a deal with the House of Saud. The deal was simple. We provide the weapons and the military protection to keep your monarchy in power, and in exchange, you, the Saudis, price every single barrel of oil in US dollars. This was the birth of the petrodollar. Suddenly, every nation on earth, Germany, Japan, China, didn't just want dollars. They needed them to keep the lights on. This created an artificial demand, a global demand, for the dollar that allowed the US to export its inflation to the rest of the world. We got oil, they got the paper. But it wasn't just about the pricing. It was even more importantly about the recycling of those earned dollars. When the GCC, which stands for Gulf Cooperation Council, when those GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, sell oil for dollars, they end up with trillions of excess, what you would call petrodollars. They couldn't just sit on them. They had to put them to work back into the US system. For 50 years, these oil profits have been the invisible hand pumping the US market and the treasury market. As of early 2025, the GCC held over $1.1 trillion in US financial assets. They weren't just buying our debt, they were buying our companies. When you look at the S&P 500's growth since the 1970s, you aren't just looking at American ingenuity, although that's a huge part of it. Not taken away from that. But you're also looking at the mandatory reinvestment of global energy wealth back into our casinos. This is why the Fed can just print trillions of dollars without the stock market immediately collapsing. Because the petrodollar system forces the world to subsidize our lifestyle. But Iran? Well, Iran decided they didn't want to play the game. So why is Iran the target now? Because they are the linchpin of the de-dollarization movement. In 2024 and 2025, we saw the BRICS bloc expand. Iran is now a full member. Russia and China have already moved 90% of their bilateral trade away from the dollar. But the nightmare for Washington is oil and yuan, which was another nation that just joined BRICS and got taken down immediately. Does Venezuela pop into your head? Great, because that was the reason for Venezuela as well. If Saudi Arabia and Iran both start accepting yuan or local currencies for oil, a process that accelerated after the Saudi-US agreement expired in 2024, the demand for the US dollar collapses. The war we are seeing now is a disciplinary action against Iran. It's a message to the rest of the BRICS nations. If you try to bypass the dollar, we will use the most expensive, well-trained military in history to stop you. These politicians, they lie and say it's about Iran's nuclear program, which I heard, just as many other people did, that apparently we obliterated back in October of 2025. But look at the map. Look at the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of global oil flows through there. If Iran moves that oil outside the dollar system, the exorbitant privilege of the United States ends. The stock market would crater, the debt clock would explode, and the American empire would be revealed as a naked emperor. They aren't fighting for your freedom. They are fighting for control over the ledger. This is the scathing reality. The price of fiat is paid for in American blood. When a government has a printer, they don't need to ask for your permission to go to war. They don't need to raise taxes and face the wrath of the voters, of the citizens of the nation. They simply print the money, steal your purchasing power through inflation, and fund the military-industrial complex. This is why Bitcoin is the greatest peace treaty in human history. I'll say that again. Bitcoin is the greatest peace treaty in human history. On a Bitcoin standard, you cannot print the sinews of war. If a nation wants to go to war, they have to pay for it in sats, real, scarce value. You cannot debase a decentralized network to fund a carrier strike group. Under a sound money system, the petrodollar extortion scheme doesn't work. You can't force a nation to use your math through violence. Value flows to where it is treated best, not where the missiles are pointed. These politicians lie because they have to. If they admitted that 19-year-olds are dying in the desert and children are dying in schools to protect a failing currency ledger, there would be a revolution tomorrow. Stacking sats, buying Bitcoin isn't just a financial play. It is a vote for a world where war is too expensive to be a hobby for the elites. It's a vote to stop paying for paper with blood, with American blood. Start building your capital in a fiat world, because the system they are trying to protect is already dead. They're just waiting for the smoke to clear. Stay sovereign. Stack sats. And I'll leave you with a little anecdote. During the last Christmas, I was trying to orange pill my whole entire family. And it went somewhat well. I mean, I got my mother to read the Bitcoin Standard by Seyfeddin Amous, which is, progress, to say the least. But I told all of them, war is financed through printed money right now in this world. And I told them that the dollar was going to stop being the world reserve currency at some point in the future, probably the near future. Because the U.S. government, not talking about America, I'm a patriot, I love this country. The U.S. government, those pedophiles in office, those corrupt members in office on both sides, continue to use the U.S. dollar, where we attempt to store our value in as a weapon. And I knew that the dollar was going to lose its currency reserve status when they kicked Russia off the SWIFT system for invading Ukraine. If you want your money to be a global ledger for the exchange of goods and services, primarily oil, which your enemies are going to use as well, or opponents, if you continue to punish them for doing something that might go against your interests or your morals, don't try to have the global reserve currency. Because the moment you use it as a weapon to punish other countries, both friend and foe, will be like, I need to get out of this system because the moment I do something that the US doesn't like, all my assets are gone. Furthermore, there's a lot of people where when you ask them, hey, what's the US dollar backed by? Because it is backed by nothing. They say, oh, it's backed by the US military. Well, you're seeing it playing out now with your stupid answers. Children, up to 1,300 children now in Iran dead. And 13 service members dead. And countless dollars spent. You think you sound smart with your little talking points. And I try to be patient because I understand that this is an education game. And if you insult and attack the people who don't agree with you, even though you're right as a Bitcoiner, you're never going to get them on your side. But it is infuriating. And now those same people who are saying, oh, well, it's backed by the US military. Okay, cool. You're correct. Don't be bitching about the Iran war anymore. Or about Venezuela. Or about Cuba. Stand 10 toes. Stand on business. Stand by your words. And see your words being played out in the most horrific way. Children and the innocent are always the ones that end up paying the ultimate price. And if you want things like this to end, stay humble and stack sats. Buy Bitcoin. This is the Debasement Index. My name is Angel Rios. This is a channel solely focused on building capital in a fiat world together. Have a great one, guys.